A thunderclap splits the sky. The air tastes like rain and iron. And a god with an impossible hammer does the most human thing of all. He walks in, and he doesn't ask permission. But here's what almost nobody expects. Thor can defeat a monster and still lose to an illusion, an invisible rule of the world. And at number 1, there's an episode so ridiculous and so iconic that it turned Mjolnir into more than a weapon, a symbol you recognize at a glance. Thor isn't just strength. He's the god who can face down a cosmic enemy and end up on his knees in front of an illusion. Today, we're doing a top 10 of Thor's adventures, not the ones where he shows up for a second, but the ones where he drives the story. This countdown follows one clear rule: cultural impact. In other words, how much each episode left behind in the imagination, icons, images, symbols, famous moments, reinterpretations, right down to us. And now we start at number 10, and you'll see why the smaller myths build the Thor who, later on, will stare the end of the world in the face. It begins with something tiny and strangely bright. Thor crosses the frozen wastes with Aurvandil, and in the cold that bites your skin, a toe freezes solid. Thor snaps it off and hurls it into the sky, turning it into a star. Then Groa arrives, trying to heal him from a shard lodged in his head, a spell half finished, interrupted by a distraction, and the pain stays there like a reminder. It's a small, almost intimate episode, but it shows a rare Thor. Not only thunder and blows, there's fragility under the beard. Because even the god of thunder carries a wound. And from here on out, the wounds only get bigger. So tell me, what happens when Thor can't use the hammer? Picture Thor, boots in the mud, cloak damp, a river in front of him that looks easy. He asks for a ride, but the ferryman Harbard pins him down with razor-sharp words, cold wind straight to the face, and challenges him to a duel of insults. Here, Thor can't split rocks. He can only snap back, growl, and finally swallow the humiliation. It's culturally powerful because it flips the cliché. The most physical god in the North gets cornered by someone's tongue. It's the myth that reminds you of something simple. Strength by itself isn't enough. And if words can stop him, imagine what happens when a sacred rule comes into play. This adventure starts with a crackling fire and the smell of roasting meat. Thor travels with his goats and offers hospitality. There's food, laughter, and then the twist. The animals come back to life. But one bone cracked the wrong way leaves a goat limping. One bone, one mistake, one leg that gives out. And Thor's anger fills the room like a storm rolling in without warning. To make it right, 2 children, Thjalfi and Roskva, enter his story. Servants, companions, witnesses to the strangest feats. It's a myth that feels like a sacred boundary. Hospitality is holy, and so are limits. And now we shift gears, because when strength isn't enough, Thor uses his mind.
A dwarf named Alvis shows up, convinced he can marry Thor's daughter. Thor doesn't meet him with muscles, but with an elegant trap, a contest of knowledge, name after name, like a rosary of ancient words sliding through the dry night air. Tell me what the gods call it, and the giants, and the elves. Thor keeps him there, question after question. And you realize he isn't hunting answers, he's letting time run out. And when the first pale light of dawn touches the threshold, Alvis turns to stone. This episode has huge impact because it celebrates the power of language. In the North, knowledge can be a weapon. But when knowledge isn't enough, Thor goes back to his real work, stepping into the giants' domains. And there are no jokes here. This is a trap.
The air here is dry and hostile, like the world itself wants you out. Thor goes to Geirrod and quickly understands this isn't a visit. It's an attack in disguise, a house that's a trap. Without his usual comforts, he has to rely on quick thinking and a crucial helping hand, objects and advice that keep him from being crushed or burned. It isn't strength alone that saves him. It's details, small helps, the right thing at the right moment. It's less famous than the hammer, but it's the purest version of Thor as defender. He survives, and then he punishes. And now we move to a duel that feels carved into stone. We're halfway down the list. And from here on, the tests don't measure strength, they measure the world's limits.
Hrungnir isn't just an enemy, he's a symbol of arrogance and ruin. He arrives promising destruction, and the tension clings to your throat like stone dust. The duel is blunt and head-on, Thor versus the raw force of the giants, and the impact seems to echo across the hills. When Mjolnir strikes, it feels like the world takes a step back. And yet, even winning, Thor is marked. A shard stays lodged in him, the price of victory. This myth lived a long life in poems and images, the champion who wins, but never for free. And now comes the unsettling part. Not everything breaks with one blow. Sometimes reality itself bends.
This is one of the most retold adventures because it plays like a lucid dream. You keep walking and the rules change under your feet. Thor arrives at Utgard and faces tests that humiliate him. Drink from a horn without emptying it, lift a cat that won't rise, wrestle an old woman who won't fall. And then someone tells him the truth, and Thor's blood turns to ice. It wasn't a cat, it was the world serpent in disguise. It wasn't just an old woman, it was old age. The cultural impact here is massive because the myth does something rare. It shows Thor unbelievably powerful, yet trapped by illusion, as if reality slips through his fingers. It became an archetype, the lesson that you can be the strongest person in the room and still lose to the rules of the world itself. And when Thor understands, the air goes cold. Because if even he can be fooled, then the world is more fragile than it looks. And if the world is fragile, imagine what happens when cosmic chaos truly rises to the surface. You can hear the dark slap of waves and taste the salt that stings your throat. Thor sets out to obtain a gigantic cauldron from Hymir, but the story really detonates when they go fishing and Thor uses an ox head as bait. The line jerks like a steel cable, the boat groans, and from the sea emerges Jormungandr, a circle of dread, eyes that should never be level with a human. In that second, you have two options, shake or strike. Thor raises Mjolnir, ready to end it, until Hymir, panicking, cuts the line. It's one of the most powerful images in Norse culture, depicted and remembered because it's the moment cosmic chaos surfaces and, by a hair, isn't stopped. And that's why you keep seeing it in the imagination. Thor in a boat The line stretched tight, the serpent rising, an image you don't forget. And if this already feels apocalyptic, it's because it is a preview. The real reckoning stands higher.
There's no irony here, only fate. At Ragnarok, the world trembles. The air tastes like ash, and Thor walks toward Jormungandr the way you walk toward a verdict. This isn't a battle, it's an appointment. They fight, and Thor does what no one should be able to do. He kills the world serpent. Then he takes a few steps, just a few, and collapses, poisoned. The cultural impact of this episode is enormous because it gives the North a definitive image of tragic heroism, not a clean victory, but a victory that costs you everything. And now, before number 1, hold on. Because if Ragnarok is the end, there's a myth that does something different. It turns Thor into a daily symbol, portable, immediate, recognizable. The hammer is gone, and suddenly the sky feels emptier. The giant Thrym steals Mjolnir and demands an impossible ransom, a divine bride. Thor, to get back the weapon that protects the world, accepts the most absurd plan imaginable. He disguises himself as the bride and goes to the feast. The scene is unforgettable, a hall full of laughter, the smell of food, and Thor devouring and drinking with a fury no veil can hide, while Loki improvises flimsier excuses. Then comes the key moment. Mjolnir is brought in to bless the wedding, and Thor grabs it. You don't hear the sound, you feel it in your bones. And right after that, the hall turns into a place of reckoning.
This episode had enormous cultural impact because it puts Mjolnir's centrality on stage, not just a weapon, but a guarantee of order, protection, identity. It fuses comedy with the sacred, and that's exactly why it sticks. And it's also the myth that makes one thing feel natural. Mjolnir isn't only meant to be wielded, it's meant to be worn, a sign of belonging, a symbol you put on your body as protection. And when Mjolnir returns to his hand, it isn't just a weapon coming home. Order comes home.
Look at this top 10 as a whole, and Thor seems always the same. Strong, blunt, stormy, but every adventure adds a shade. Vulnerability, humiliation, strategy, illusion, and finally, sacrifice. That's what makes Thor so culturally resilient. He isn't just a muscle god. He's a character who crosses the line between the everyday and the cosmic, between laughter and catastrophe. And maybe that's why he never fades. He isn't invincible, he's inevitable.
Now it's your turn. Which adventure would you put at number 1, and which one would you cut without regret? If you want, in the next video, we can step into the darker side, Loki, his tricks, and the price the gods pay for every successful deception. Because every trick Loki pulls eventually comes due.